adorable. You don't even look old enough. And he goes, and he just cracked a smile. He laughed. He goes, well, I'm 18, ma'am. And I looked at him, and I'm just looking at this blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid who looks like he's 12. I'm looking at his poise. I am looking at his confidence. I am looking at how polite he is towards these women, answering their questions, calling them ma'am, not being snide. I don't know what he's thinking in his head. He's probably thinking, well, geez, lady, I'm 18 years old. Give me a break. But his response to them and his actions and the way he carried himself, 18 years old? Now, I talked to him a little bit. I said, well, where are you headed? He goes, I'm headed back to Georgia. I said, oh, boy, well, this is probably the best time to go down there. Now, I'm thinking that maybe he's, still in basic training. I think this is probably a good time to, the humidity is a lot less and you're not going down there in July or August when the heat is at its worst and the humidity is at its worst. Because, I was down there, I graduated basic at the beginning of July. I go, oh, well, you already know. He goes, yes, sir, I do. I said, well, good for you, young man. Now, I didn't ask him what his job was in the military. And for those who know military terms, that would be MOS. I didn't ask what his MOS was because I didn't really think it was any of my business. He's probably still training in it. But here he is, 18 years old, carrying himself with such poise. And also getting on the bus with us was this 20-something college student, male, long hair, pierced ears, pierced nose, walking around, now I'm going to be blunt, walking around like a faggot. And he probably wasn't gay. But you get what I'm saying. And he was being kind of rude. And I'm thinking, wow, what a difference. 18-year-old young man. 18-year-old young man who volunteered to go in the military to serve his country and help protect us. And he's out there doing his job to protect us at the age of 18 to help this 20-something-year-old boy who's running around acting like everything circles around him. What a difference. And I made a comment to Ken. I said, maybe countries like Sweden and Switzerland have it right. Maybe, every male in this country should serve 1 or 2 years in the military. I know we have a constitution, they have freedom, but it just seems to me if we had some sort of system like that in place, we wouldn't have half the problems that we have with the young people in this country. And maybe there'd be a little bit more respect for our Constitution and for our laws. Maybe there'd be less support for people like Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama. Maybe we wouldn't have Occupy Wall Street. And maybe we wouldn't be talking about Obama coming up with a way to confiscate your firearm because the young men of this country would not allow it. It amazes me. Look, I'm a people watcher. I like to watch and listen to people. And and in the Charlotte airport, now evidently, all these wonderful young men, most of them in their army fatigue, camouflage fatigue. So, some of them were not. Most of them were. But watching them walk through the Charlotte airport, because I had to fly into Charlotte, take a connecting, jump jet flight, prop job over to Hilton Head Island. But I'm watching all of these, and there were a lot. So they're coming back from their Christmas holiday, Christmas break, and probably a lot of them, they all looked very young. So they were probably, recent boot camp grads or recent grads for their MOS training. So they're heading back to their duty station, and I'm watching them conducting themselves in this airport. And even the ones that were not in uniform, but you knew that they were in the military because who they were hanging around with and how they were conducting themselves and what they were carrying, actually. Some of their duffel bags and stuff. But I'm watching these guys. And then I'm watching at the same time all of these other young males around the same age who are not military. And I see such a stark difference between them. And I'm just sitting in my chair in the airport waiting for my flight. By the way, American Airlines, y'all got some problems you need to iron out. Now, over the past 3 days, I've taken 4 different flights. Only one of them was on time. And the one that was on time was only on time because it was the last flight of the day going to where I was going. And it's the only one that left on time. So 3 out of the 4 flights were late. Now, I don't know, but maybe what we need in these airports, because I'm looking at a lot of these employees at these airports too, and thinking, I'm not talking about the TSA agents. That's a whole different ballgame. But I'm looking at these workers. There is no sense of urgency or care whatsoever in their actions. And they're not all like that. I understand that. But we sat on the tarmac for 10 minutes when we landed from Hilton Head going to Charlotte. We sat in the tarmac for 10 minutes. Why? Because somebody couldn't get their ass in gear to bring out the power cables to hook it up to the aircraft. Now, they can't turn off both because they're prop engines. So they can't turn off the second prop engine until they get power hooked up. Ground power, as they call it. And we can't deplane, as their term, until all engines have fully stopped. So many people have connecting flights that they've got to get to. But yet and still somebody wasn't paying, and they kept saying, well, we need the ground power. I don't know what the big deal was. Why not just go out there and pull the damn cable that you need to? Every one of the gates has these things, so why can't somebody connect it to the plane? What was the pilot was sitting up there? I don't know. We can't turn off the engine until they connect us to ground power for 10 minutes. That's American Airlines for 10 freaking minutes. I don't understand that kind of stuff. And this one guy kept coming up and he goes, well, I don't know what's happening. Well, can you do it? Can you connect it? He goes, well, I'm not supposed to. Are you capable of doing it? Yeah, but it's not my job. What? Wait, so you've been trained on how to do it properly, but today it's not your job? Well, who's the person whose job it is, and why aren't they doing their job? And why don't you care enough to go find them? But in that airport were a bunch of young men who cared. They conducted themselves with professionalism, and they acted like men. Versus, you could tell the difference between those trained men that had respect for other people versus those other guys of their same age that did not act the way that those military people acted. The same level of care and consideration for others was not there in the civilians. And it was such a stark difference. Yeah, I gotta tell you, the men and women of our military, I am so proud of those people. Those young, I don't know. I can't say enough good, positive stuff about them. Because they are head and shoulders above the vast majority of civilians of their same age. The difference is just amazing. And look, those young men today are going to be leaders tomorrow. We don't have enough of them. Because what we got instead is people like Barack Obama, who are running around faking tears at a press conference. I just can't believe we got to do something about this gun violence. And trying to usurp the Constitution every chance he gets because it's all about him. I mean, it's all about him. No, I'm president. No, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to let this happen. And I'm going to make sure that people do this. And I'm going to make sure people do that. And because I said so, because I'm the president. You know, there was an article I'm getting sick and tired of seeing this kind of stuff. But there was an article about Congress is about to repeal, is about to lay the hammer down on Obamacare. I'm like, give me a freaking break. I am so sick and tired of hearing this stuff. Look, repeal it with a veto-proof majority, and then we'll talk. And then we'll say that you did something in Congress. And don't give me this crap that they're going to, send Obama. They're not sending him anything. You got doctors who are now going to be reporting people who may. So be prepared. One of the when you go to your doctor and they ask you all sorts of health questions, one of the questions that they're now going to be forced to ask you is, do you own a firearm? And you'll probably at first say, well, what does that got to do with anything? Because if you do, and the doctor thinks for whatever reason that you might be even a tad bit slightly off mentally, he's going to have to report you. And you're going to get a knock on your door from your local police or sheriff's department and the FBI saying, well, you got to turn in your guns, man, because you're unstable. Folks, I'm telling you, this is going to happen. This is the way it's going. I don't, folks, you really got to start paying attention to stuff like this. Oh, by the way, we got another news sponsor here, and it actually has to do with healthcare. So basically, if you're sick and tired of the constant financial pressure that our government is putting on us, and they do it all the time, they're constantly putting we can do with less, the government can't do with less. So if the government needs more money, they just take it from us, and they just say, well, you deal with less. So they're constantly putting pressure on our pockets. So, look, I feel your pain, and the people at StopObamacareTaxNow.com feel your pain, and because they've heard the horror stories surrounding the Affordable Care Act. We've all heard these horrible stories. So when you look at the facts, the Affordable Care Act numbers just don't add up. And if you think that you're going to get hammered, that you have to be hammered either by having health care insurance from Obamacare or paying the stiff fines and penalties that are sure to come if you don't, you may be able to get out of it. And in order to find out, you need to visit www.stopobamacaretaxnow.com to find out more about what your rights are under the Obamacare legislation. That's www.stopobamacaretaxnow.com. You may find that there are alternatives, cheaper ways for you to handle your health care needs and still be compliant with the federal government until the Republicans get their act in gear and their butts in action and actually repeal this crap. So again, that's www.stopobamacaretaxnow.com. And one of the most exciting things that I could possibly be saying to you right now is the fact that this is not the end of the program. Oh, no. We've still got another hour to go. Isn't that wonderful? Because I still have a lot more to discuss with you. So hang in there, folks. We'll be right back after the break. Rod Eccles still bringing the rain.